Hello friends and welcome to another edition of Into Fly Fishing. Today we're here to talk about this Redington Dually, what we like about this rod, what we don't like so much, and how it might fit into your arsenal. So let's get going. Thanks for being here again, friends. I'm Nick Jovanovich and this is Into Fly Fishing. I've been fly fishing for about 35 years of my life. I've been a professional guide as well in Southwest Montana for the last 15. So I get to use a lot of rods, a lot of reels, and a lot of lines. I abuse them. I have them used daily by clients. So we get a lot of use in a short amount of time to see how things are going to stand up. And it's really nice because I get a front row seat in how not only I use the equipment, how it works for me, but how it works for other people as well. So I get a broad spectrum of information coming in a short period of time. But let's get started on this Redington Dually rod here. It's a brand new rod. I'm out here doing some winter steelhead fishing. I've got it set up for nymphing, but this line I've got on here is also going to be perfect for swinging flies. So that's why I'm using the switch model of this Dually. I can cast it as a nymphing rod. I can cast it two-handed. You can technically, theoretically cast one-handed. It's a little long and heavy for that usually, but you can use it as a single hand rod, or you can use it as a spey rod. It fits right in the middle. If you're looking at the Dually, you're probably looking at a bunch of other rods. You might be looking at that TFO Pro 2 two-hand model, or you might be looking at the Echo Swing Switch, that switch model of the swing line from Echo. Both very nice rods, of course, and comparable to the Dually, but let's see what this rod has to offer and if this thing fits into your arsenal well or not. Now, before we go too far, I want to ask you to go ahead and like this video, follow us here on this channel, and that helps us out big time. We really appreciate it. We appreciate you being here. It does take a lot of time and effort and, yes, money to bring these videos to you. We love doing it. We want to keep doing it. So anything you can do to help us out is a really big deal. So we appreciate it. Again, let's get on with the video. Now, when we're testing these rods, we like to set up a lot of different scenarios. This rod as a spade type rod is pretty hard to cast on a dry land situation. Like other single hand rods, you can go into the grass like on a soccer field, baseball field, or your backyard if you got some opening and give it a go. This, you really need the water to make a water loaded cast to make it work. So we're out here on the river to figure this out. We're going to do some tests. We're going to set up some targets at different distances. We're going to use it as a nymph rod. We're going to use it as a spey rod and just see how it goes. Of course, we're hoping to catch some steelhead, and that'd be phenomenal if we could get some on video here for you and see how this thing even battles some fish. So let's get going on that. One reminder here is that anything you see, this rod here, you want to pick this thing up, we'll have the link for it in the description below. If you use that link, we would really appreciate it. It helps us out as well, and you get yourself your new rod, and we can keep bringing these videos to you. Well, let's start with the back end of this rod. So as you can see, of course, it's going to be a two-hand version. So you're going to have a nice, a fairly decent grade cork handle. You've got an extended back, some might call the fighting butt is actually your backhand grip. So your forehand goes up here and your backhand back here. And it's a true cork in most of it. Now at the very front and the very back, you've got the composite cork. That saves a little bit of money. It's a little bit more durable. It's a little harder than your standard cork as well. And then on the back of the fighting butt, you got a little bit of a rubber coating there. And that just is because it's going to get a lot of abrasion up against your body. It's going to get nicked up a bit. That'll protect the cork quite well. Now let's move into that reel seat. It's a anodized aluminum reel seat in a really cool copper color. You see that Dually logo right there. And that's going to be a forward locking reel seat. So you've got your connector ring, and then you've got one locking nut and then another locking nut that moves up behind that to keep everything nice and tight in place. The blank is a graphite blank, and all the guides are hard chrome. You got hard chrome stripping guides and hard chrome snake guides as well. The two stripping guides on the second piece, you got a larger stripping guide and a smaller stripping guide. Those have zirconia inserts. So that's not going to be a ceramic insert. That's a zirconia insert, a hard, slick insert so your line can shoot or slide through there real easily. All the rods are 4 pieces, and they come in various sizes. You start with the trout spey. That's a 10-foot, 6-inch, 3 or 4 weight model. The switch comes in an 11-foot, 5 and 6 weight, an 11.5-foot, 7 and 8 weight, and then we jump up to the spey models. The spey models are going to be your 12.5-foot, 6 to 7 weight, or a 13.5-foot, 7 or 8-weight option. Redington also gives you a choice of a special purple edition dually. You can choose that purple edition in the 11.5 foot 7-weight, 12.5 foot 7-weight, or 13.5 foot 7-weight. Now check out this color. Now the dually has been around for a few years. It came kind of after the Cromer line. Cromer was a huge successful line. The dually is sort of a lesser expensive, more intermediate to beginner type two-handed rod. All right, let's get out here and make some casts and see how this goes. So right now I'm set up for winter steelhead nymphing, and we'll get various different shots going as far as cast styles and see how this rod feels. So first initial casts are going to be short. Anything under 20 feet isn't really going to be doable as far as loading the rod. All I'm really going to do for something short is 20 feet with this long of a rod and this heavy of a line. I'm using a 450 grain Rio shooting line made specifically for switch rods, and I've got my Sage Spectrum here as the reel, and that is it's an 8-weight reel. But anything that's really short, like 20, all I'm going to do is really kind of drag the water and just kind of plop. And in fact, that's even a little bit longer than 20 feet. All you need to do is really lift and set, or do a nice lift and over the top. You're not really going to get a lot of flex on the rod, but at least it's going to get out there. You can fish kind of close to you. The short shots aren't really going to be anything that you're going to have to be concerned about making any accuracy or anything with this kind of a setup. So I'm going to let a bit more line out. Let's talk about something that's more in like the 30 to 40 range. There we are out about 30 feet, really easy. And that action of this rod really makes that cast pretty simple. Now, that's kind of just a real simple D-loop cast, similar to something you use with a full-size spey rod, but that feels pretty good. So this rod listed again as a medium fast action rod. It's a little bit softer than a lot of fast action rods that I use, meaning you can find that sweet spot pretty easily and really get your cast going without too much work. Now we're going to pull a little bit more of the shooting line out here, more like the 50-foot range. So again, something in the 50-foot range. I've got some of this boulders out here. I've got a boulder line marked out here, ranged at about 50 feet. That was pretty easy to do. Again, not a lot of effort to get this rod loaded and shoot 50 feet of line. So we've got it ranged. A couple of boulders out in the slick over on the other side is right at about 70 feet out there. Okay, after punching a few longer shots out there, 70 feet, not too bad. When you're trying to get over 70 feet into the 80s or so and above, you're kind of losing a little bit of power. And there's a few reasons that could be. It's not a fast action technical rod, so we've got some fast current, we got some wind coming down too, so that could be affecting it. But when you have a medium fast versus a fast action rod and you're not able to power it through, it's just sometimes because the rod isn't able to load it quite as well as something like a fast action rod. Not terrible, kind of dies down a little bit after about 70. So that's what if you're doing the spey configuration on this, or spey type cast. Now, if you're gonna just use it as a simple steelhead nymphing rig, the extra reach is good. It's a little bit longer than a standard single hand rod, of course, so you're gonna feel the weight, but you can still just do kind of some water loaded casting. You just plop it down behind you. It's a simple roll cast, but switching your hands around, pop it out, and now I'm nymphing. And now I'm just nymphing a run like I would with any other nymph rod. And I'm not false casting this in the air because it's a heavy winter steelhead nymphing setup. So it's a little too heavy. I can't false cast up here. I got to kind of lay the back cast out on the water, lay the forward cast out on the water. I can go back and forth if I need to build up some distance like this. Let a little line out, let a little bit more line out. It's just too heavy. The loops won't stay up in the air if I'm false casting like a traditional trout fly rod. But as I'm using it here for steelhead nymphing, it's working just great. It's really simple. Again, I can just lift up and kind of spin my hands around to get that back cast, spin my hands around to get that forward cast, and I'm out there a good distance nymphing the run that I'm looking at nymphing here. So a switch rod covers a whole lot of ground. It covers that single hand style nymphing rod. It covers a spey type casting rod situation as well. It just doesn't do either one really, really, really well. But of course, you're not really going to spey cast on a single hand rod, and using a spey rod to nymph is a little bit cumbersome as well. So you're getting a lot of different kinds of use just not really great at those uses. But I can tell you from a lot of experience that when you're out here nymphing heavy nymph rigs for steelhead or salmon, that using a switch rod like this, two-hand casting style, really can save you a lot of energy. Versus my brothers who are out here using a single hand 8-weight, they have to cast and cast or roll cast, roll cast, roll cast. And really all I have to do is, that's just water loaded haul from the current up over the top and I'm fishing. Or I just have two really simple casts. There's a back cast, not much motion, just spinning my hands around. There's another cast. Saves a lot of energy in the day. Okay, say we're not using a bobber, we're not nymphing. We're gonna try a little bit more just traditional spey and swing with this switch rod. Cast feels good without that heavy indicator on there. Good feel through the drift and the swing. The tip is sensitive enough where I can feel things moving, but it doesn't feel like it's a noodle either. Let's try it on a snap tee. Not too bad. A spey rod's going to feel better with the snap tee type cast, but it felt crisp enough. So the spey casting and swinging feels just fine. Of course, a standard spey rod is going to do a better job at the cast and feel better through the swing as well. But again, you can cover both nymphing, single hand style fishing, and swinging with a switch rod like this. All right, we've had this thing out on the water for a few days now. And I've made a lot of casts. If you know anything about steelhead fishing, you're just casting, casting, casting all the time. I fished this thing for 3 days straight, and I found some great stuff about it, and I found some stuff that could be improved, but that's the way it is with any rod. So we've had some pretty good action on the water with this thing, and I've got a pretty good idea of how this feels. Now, this is actually the first dually I've ever owned, I've ever cast, I've ever had out on the water. And I do like it. I've enjoyed some things about it. There's some things that I don't really like about it, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So let's talk a few pros and cons on this rod. Now, the pros are, well, it's hard to beat the price. You're getting a lot of rod for not a lot of money. This is a great rod. Number two pros, you're going to get a lot of coverage. You've got a lot of different sizes to cover you from the trout spey to the switch game, all the way up to the full spey, your Skagit or Scandi cast. That's fantastic. The third pro is that this medium fast action, it really is easy to find the sweet spot and make a good solid cast. You're not fighting to find the sweet spot in a faster action rod that can be kind of difficult and really hard to push and needs a really tight caster or really accurate caster. And on the other hand, it's not so slow that you're not going to get any power behind your casts. Now, what I don't like about this rod is, well, it does feel just a little bit heavier than other rods in this category. And now this is in a different category than the Redington Claymore, but the Redington Claymore has a little bit less weight to it, a little bit less weight in the hand feel as well, but it's not going to kill you. So this thing is a little bit heavier. It's not my favorite in that respect, but still a great rod. And the second con, it's accurate-ish, but not super accurate. Again, if you're just starting out in the spey or switch game, you're not really going to know. It's not going to matter to you yet. So it's not really a deal killer, not the most accurate rod, but it's not way off either. What is this rod intended for? This is a perfect rod for anybody who's looking to start fishing or has fished a little bit of steelhead or trout. Of course, you got those trout spey, steelhead, or small salmon. This is a great rod for you. Rod is definitely what I would say a medium fast. So it's a little bit slower than like the Claymore, which is the step up two-handed rod from Redington. Those fast action rods can be a little bit harder to find the sweet spot when you're casting. You kind of got to know what you're doing a little bit better. A rod like this, it's a medium fast action. Newer casters, people who are newer to the game of spey, will easily find the sweet spot during the cast. And that's whether you're doing a snap tee, a D-loop, just a roll cast, or doing some plop casting if you're winter steelhead fishing and you got a heavy nymph setup and you're plopping the water downstream and throwing it back up. This is a great rod. You also got some great reach to make some mends as well. Now the price is going to help out those newer casters too. This thing comes at $300. $300 for this rod, that's hard to beat. You get a lot of rod for the money, and Redington's known for that. You get some pretty cool aesthetics. Now, it's non-traditional in the look of it, of course. That's what Redington does. They make stuff that has a little bit more pizzazz to it, a little bit more aesthetically pleasing to a younger generation. So who's this best for? Well, this rod's best for somebody who doesn't have any experience in spey or switch, or has a little bit of experience and wants to get their own rod, you're going to enjoy this rod. Even if you're an intermediate caster, you might pick up this rod if you have something that specifically needs covered in your quiver, like you have different rods for different situations, but you're missing one and you don't want to spend a whole lot of money on some other high-end rod. This rod is something really good to add to your repertoire. Now, I wouldn't recommend it for advanced casters necessarily. You're probably better off going with a little faster action rod. This would be great for guides too. Again, I'm a guide. I like to talk about guides. And if you need to add some switch or spey to your boat for your clients, you don't have to spend a ton of money. They're going to get that done pretty easy with this. They're going to be able to cast it just fine, even if they've never cast spey or switch before. Well, friends, that's about it for today. We really appreciate you being here. Thank you very much. I hope you really liked that informational session on this Redington Dually. If you like it, there is that link below. Please click that link, get yourself the rod. Helps us out a lot. And of course, you get your rod. Follow us on all the social media channels. Like this video. Follow us here. We really appreciate it. We love doing this for you. We want to keep doing it. And again, this is Into Fly Fishing. I'm Nick Jovanovich. Thank you so much for being here. We'll see you out here next time.